The humiliation, the grand ballroom of the Meridian Hotel gleamed like a palace from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers scattered rainbow light across marble floors that probably cost more than Celeste Rivera's entire yearly salary. She adjusted her black server's uniform nervously, balancing the silver tray of champagne flutes with trembling hands. At 24, Celeste spent her days teaching art to children at a community center, finding joy in their bright smiles and creative spirits. But tonight, she was here for a different reason entirely. Her best friend Nina had begged her to cover this shift at the last minute, and Celeste desperately needed the money. Her mother's cancer treatments were draining every penny she had, and this single evening's work would cover her rent for 2 weeks. Just smile and stay invisible, Nina had warned her earlier. These people don't see us as human beings anyway. But tonight was different. Tonight, Celeste wore something special underneath her server's apron, a dress she had spent 3 weeks creating from fabric remnants found at a discount store. The midnight blue silk hugged her curves perfectly, its simple elegance hiding its humble origins. She had dreamed of blending in with the guests, maybe even feeling beautiful for one night. She was terribly wrong. My goodness, look at this. Little waitress playing dress-up. Sharp voice cut through the classical music like a knife. Victoria Sterling, Manhattan's most notorious socialite, approached with her usual entourage of perfectly polished women. Her platinum blonde hair was styled in an elaborate updo, and her red designer gown probably cost more than Celeste made in 6 months. Her green eyes sparkled with malicious delight as she circled Celeste like a predator stalking wounded prey. "Girls, come look at this adorable little thing," Victoria called out, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "She's made herself a dress. How quaint. Did you use your grandmother's curtains, dear?" The group erupted in laughter, their voices carrying across the ballroom like the cawing of cruel birds. Other guests began to turn and stare, their conversations dying as they focused on the unfolding spectacle. Celeste felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she forced herself to stand tall, maintaining her professional smile despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "I made it myself," Celeste said quietly, her voice barely audible above the cruel laughter, yet somehow filled with dignity and pride. How precious. Victoria cooed, then pretended to stumble, deliberately bumping into Celeste's tray. Red wine splashed across the midnight blue silk, spreading like blood across her chest. "Oops, I'm so clumsy. I hope that wasn't your only dress, darling." The crowd's laughter grew louder and more vicious. Celeste clutched the empty tray to her chest, wine dripping onto the pristine marble floor. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes as she stood there, surrounded by the cruel amusement of people who saw her as nothing more than entertainment. Just as she was about to flee, something extraordinary happened. The entire ballroom fell silent. Sebastian Cross had arrived. The rescue, even Celeste, who avoided celebrity gossip, knew who Sebastian Cross was. The 30-year-old tech billionaire dominated headlines with his revolutionary software company and mysterious personal life. He was impossibly tall, with dark wavy hair and steel-gray eyes that seemed to see everything. His black tuxedo was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his broad shoulders and athletic build. But it wasn't his appearance that commanded the room's attention. It was his presence. He moved through the crowd like a force of nature, people instinctively stepping aside as he approached. His eyes swept the scene, taking in Victoria's triumphant smirk, the wine-stained dress, and Celeste's mortified expression. Without hesitation, Sebastian reached into his jacket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. He approached Celeste directly, his footsteps echoing in the sudden, complete silence that had fallen over the ballroom. "Use this," he said, his voice deep and commanding as he placed the handkerchief in her trembling hands. The silk was softer than anything she had ever touched, probably worth more than her entire outfit. Then Sebastian did something that made the entire ballroom gasp in collective shock. Sebastian Cross, one of the most powerful men in New York, slipped his arm around Celeste's waist and pulled her gently against his side. She could feel the warmth of his body through his tuxedo, smelled his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely masculine and comforting. "Everyone," Sebastian's voice rang out clear and authoritative. Carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom, "I'd like you to meet my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Victoria's face went white, then red, then white again. Celeste felt the world spinning around her, Sebastian's strong arm the only thing keeping her upright in her shock. "Your wife?" Victoria's voice cracked like breaking glass. "Sebastian, what are you talking about? We were supposed to announce our engagement tonight." Sebastian's gray eyes fixed on Victoria with cold indifference that could have frozen fire. "Were we? I must have forgotten." His arm tightened protectively around Celeste's waist. "I've been rather distracted by my beautiful bride." Celeste finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "What are you doing?" Sebastian leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "Saving you," he murmured, so only she could hear. "Play along." The crowd erupted in whispers and shocked murmurs. Phones appeared from evening purses and jacket pockets, capturing the moment that would be splashed across social media within minutes. Celeste Rivera, unknown art teacher, was suddenly the most talked-about woman in New York. "Sebastian, darling, surely you're joking," came a sharp voice from the crowd. Helena Cross, Sebastian's mother, pushed through the gathering, her elegant figure cutting through the crowd like a ship through water. She was a distinguished woman in her 50s, her silver hair perfectly coiffed and her blue eyes sharp as winter ice. "This girl is a waitress. She's an artist," Sebastian corrected, his voice carrying a warning that made even his formidable mother pause. "And she's my wife. I expect you all to treat her with the respect she deserves." Victoria stepped forward, her composure finally cracking like expensive veneer. "This is ridiculous, Sebastian. You can't seriously expect anyone to believe you married this nobody without telling anyone." "Watch your tongue, Victoria." Sebastian's voice dropped to a dangerous level that made the surrounding guests step back instinctively. "You're speaking about my wife." Asterisk the proposal. The tension in the ballroom was suffocating. Celeste could feel hundreds of eyes on her, dissecting every detail of her appearance, her background, her worthiness. She wanted to run, to disappear, but Sebastian's reassuring presence kept her anchored in place.
"Ask him."
"Ladies and gentlemen," Sebastian addressed the crowd with the commanding tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed.
"Oh, my wife."
"My wife and I have had a long day. We'll be retiring for the evening." He guided Celeste toward the exit, his hand never leaving her waist. The crowd parted before them like the Red Sea, whispers and shocked murmurs following in their wake like the trailing of a comet. They were outside the ballroom. In a quiet corridor lined with expensive artwork, Celeste finally pulled away from Sebastian's protective embrace. "Are you insane?" she hissed, her voice shaking with adrenaline and confusion. "You just told everyone I'm your wife." "I don't even know you." Sebastian studied her face, his gray eyes unreadable as storm clouds. "You were drowning in there. They would have torn you apart for sport, so you lied to save me." Celeste's voice rose with disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you've just done? The media will go crazy. People will want to know everything about me." "I know exactly what I've done," Sebastian said calmly, pulling out his phone. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Celeste stared at him, wine still staining her handmade dress, her hair disheveled from the evening's chaos. "Going to go home and pretend this never happened. It's not an option anymore," Sebastian said, showing her his phone screen. Already it was lighting up with notifications like a Christmas tree. Celeste's heart sank as she saw the headlines already forming. Sebastian Cross's secret wife revealed at charity gala. Billionaire's mystery bride. From waitress to wife. The Cinderella story of the century. "This is a nightmare," she whispered, feeling the weight of the world crashing down on her shoulders. Sebastian pocketed his phone and looked at her with surprising seriousness. "It doesn't have to be. I have a proposition for you." Celeste laughed bitterly, the sound echoing off the marble walls. "You've already ruined my life. What more could you possibly want?" "I want you to be my wife," Sebastian said, his voice matter-of-fact as if he were discussing the weather. Temporarily. For real this time. Celeste's mouth fell open. You're completely insane. My mother and the board of directors have been pressuring me to marry Victoria Sterling, Sebastian explained, his voice taking on a weary tone. It would merge our companies and make both families incredibly wealthy. But I can't stand the woman, and after tonight I suspect the feeling is mutual. So you want to use me to get out of an arranged marriage? I want to offer you a mutually beneficial arrangement, Sebastian corrected. You need money for your mother's medical bills. Don't look surprised. I had you investigated the moment. I decided to help you. I need a wife who won't try to control my life or steal my fortune. Celeste's head was spinning. This is crazy. People don't just get married for business arrangements anymore. They do in my world, Sebastian said grimly. The difference is, I'm offering you a choice. Marry me for 1 year. Help me convince my family and the board that I'm settled and responsible. In return, I'll pay all your mother's medical expenses, give you a generous monthly allowance, and at the end of the year, you'll receive a settlement that will set you up for life. And if I say no? Sebastian's expression softened slightly. Then I'll do everything I can to protect you from the media storm that's coming. But I can't undo what I've already done. Your life has changed forever, Celeste. The only question is whether you want to control that change or let it control you. The marriage 3 days later, Celeste found herself standing in Sebastian's penthouse apartment. Staring out at the Manhattan skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, the view was breathtaking, but it felt like looking at another world. One she didn't belong in. I can't believe I'm doing this, she murmured, turning the simple gold band on her finger. The private ceremony had been quick and businesslike, with only Sebastian's lawyer as a witness. But somehow, the ring felt heavier than it should have. Having second thoughts? Sebastian asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. He had traded his formal tuxedo for dark jeans and a white button-down shirt, and somehow he looked even more handsome, more real. Every minute, Celeste admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. But my mother's first treatment is tomorrow, and for the first time in months, I'm not terrified about how we'll pay for it. Sebastian nodded understandingly. I visited her yesterday while you were moving your things. She's remarkable. I can see where you get your strength. Celeste looked at him in surprise. You visited my mother. I wanted to assure her that. You'd be safe with me, Sebastian said quietly. She was protective. I like that about her. The first month of their arrangement was awkward, but surprisingly comfortable. Sebastian kept his distance, giving Celeste her own wing of the penthouse, and respecting her privacy. They appeared together at carefully selected public events, playing the role of newlyweds for the cameras, while maintaining a polite friendship in private. But slowly, something began to change. Celeste discovered that beneath Sebastian's cold, business exterior was a man who read voraciously, loved classical music, and had a secret passion for cooking. He found her painting late one night in the spare room she'd converted into a studio, and instead of being annoyed, he watched her work with genuine fascination. You're incredibly talented, he said, studying her canvas. Why aren't you showing your work? Because I'm just a community center teacher, Celeste replied, wiping paint from her hands. No, Sebastian said firmly. You're an artist who happens to teach. There's a difference. The next week, he surprised her by arranging a meeting with one of New York's most prestigious gallery owners. When Celeste protested, Sebastian simply smiled.
Asked.
Consider it a wedding gift. Their relationship began to shift from business arrangement to something deeper. They started sharing meals, talking. Late into the night about their dreams and fears, Sebastian told her about the pressure he felt to live up to his father's legacy. Celeste shared her worries about her mother's illness and her own feelings of inadequacy, Sebastian said one evening as they walked through Central Park. I haven't thought about Victoria or the board's expectations in weeks. Is that good or bad? Celeste asked, her heart beating faster at the gentle way he was looking at her. I'm not sure, Sebastian admitted, but I know I'm happier than I've been in years. The turning point came during their 4th month together. Celeste's mother had a setback, and Celeste spent 3 days at the hospital, refusing to leave her side. When she finally returned to the penthouse, emotionally exhausted, she found Sebastian waiting for her. "How is she?" he asked immediately, pulling her into his arms. "Better. The doctors say she's responding well to the treatment," Celeste said, realizing how natural it felt to be held by him. "Sebastian, I know," he said softly, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "I feel it too." When she looked up at him, she saw her own emotions reflected in his gray eyes. Without thinking, she rose on her tiptoes and kissed him. It was meant to be a simple kiss of gratitude, but it became something much more profound. "This wasn't part of the arrangement," Sebastian whispered against her lips. "No," Celeste agreed, her hands fisting in his shirt. "It wasn't." But neither of them pulled away. True love 6 months into their marriage, Celeste's first art exhibition opened at the Whitmore Gallery. The elegant space was filled with her paintings, vibrant, emotional pieces that captured the beauty she saw in everyday life. Sebastian stood beside her, his hand resting protectively on her lower back, as art critics and collectors praised her work. "I can't believe this is really happening," Celeste whispered, watching as red dots appeared next to her paintings, indicating sales. "I can," Sebastian said, his voice filled with pride. "I've watched you create these. They're pieces of your soul, Celeste." Of course, people are responding to them. As the evening progressed, Celeste noticed Sebastian's mother, Helena, studying. One particular painting, a tender portrait of Celeste's own mother during one of her treatment sessions. The older woman's expression was thoughtful, almost vulnerable. "It's beautiful," Helena said when she approached them. "You've captured something profound here, the strength that comes from love, even in the face of suffering." "Thank you," Celeste said, surprised by the genuine warmth in Helena's voice. Helena turned to her son. "Sebastian, I owe you both an apology. I was wrong about this marriage, about Celeste. I can see now that you've found something real." Later, that night, alone in their penthouse, Sebastian and Celeste stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The success of the evening had brought them closer, but it had also reminded them that their original year-long agreement was more than halfway over. "I've been thinking," Sebastian said, his voice carefully neutral, "about our arrangement." Celeste's heart clenched. "The board has officially approved of our marriage. My mother clearly adores you now. Vittoria has announced her engagement to a European count. I've achieved everything I set out to accomplish." "That's wonderful," Celeste said, though the words felt like ash in her mouth. "So I suppose we can start planning for the end of our agreement." Sebastian turned to face her fully. "What if I don't want it to end?" Celeste's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that somewhere along the way, this stopped being about business for me," Sebastian said, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you, Celeste, not as a convenient wife or a business arrangement, but as the woman who makes me laugh, who challenges me to be better, who sees beauty in everything around her." Tears spilled down Celeste's cheeks. "Sebastian, ... I know I'm not the easiest man to love," he continued, stepping closer. "I'm demanding, stubborn, and I work too much. But if you'll have me, really have me, I promise to spend every day proving that you made the right choice that night at the gala. Saved me that night," Celeste said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you've been saving me every day since. I love you too, Sebastian. Not because of what you can give me, but because of who you are when you let your guard down. Because of the way you make me feel like I'm worth something." Sebastian cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "You're worth everything to me." When he kissed her this time, it wasn't desperate or uncertain like their first kiss. It was a promise, a commitment, a declaration of love that needed no words. 1 year later, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. Celeste's mother, now in remission, walked her down the aisle. Helena Cross had become like a second mother to Celeste, and even some of the guests from that first terrible gala were present, though. Victoria Sterling was notably absent. As they exchanged rings for the second time, Sebastian whispered, "Thank you for playing along that night." "Thank you for saving me," Celeste whispered back. "We saved each other," Sebastian corrected, and kissed his wife as the crowd erupted in applause. Later, at the reception, Celeste looked around at the faces of people who had become family, at the man who had become her whole world, and at the life they had built together from a single moment of unexpected kindness. sometimes the most beautiful. Love stories begin with the simplest act of human decency. Sometimes a lie told to protect someone becomes the truest thing you'll ever say. And sometimes when everyone mocks you and treats you as less than human, a stranger will step forward to remind the world and you that you deserve respect, dignity, and love. As Sebastian spun her around the dance floor, Celeste smiled up at the man who had changed her life with 3 simple words. "She's my wife." Words that had started as a protective lie, but had become the most important truth of both their lives. The end.